Great. Good morning, everybody. Let's give a few seconds more for people to join this session. Great. I'll give it a kickstart while people still connect, because I'm not, let's say, the key person on this session, but our panelists will be. So let's give them enough time to share their insights. So welcome everybody. For those that are already joined, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining from. Welcome to this session called The Value of Digitalization in Product as a Service to Scale Energy Efficiency, Renewables, and Circularity within PaaS models. So I'm Dimitris Karamitsos, I'm your host today, and I'm working for the Basel Agency for Sustainable Energy, which is the foundation and nonprofit which is behind the SET Alliance, which is leading the organization of this webinar today. So before we start, a few house rules. For all of the attendees to know, you have the opportunity to ask questions throughout the session. So don't hesitate. You see there is a little Q&A box on your Zoom window. You can pop in any questions you have throughout the sessions, and we will try to cherry pick those as the speaker goes. And any questions we don't have the time to answer, we'll try to collect all of those questions and provide to you written answers next week once the webinar has been wrapped up. Important to know as well, after the session, we will ask you for a feedback on our session. So we highly value your voice. So don't hesitate to provide your critical insights so that we can improve our webinars. And as well, we invite you to follow the SET Alliance on LinkedIn and to follow our newsletter for any news we have upcoming or from past activities we had within the SET Alliance. Before starting, I'm actually going to launch a poll question for our attendees. So you should see a pop-up window on your screen, and I'll give you about a minute to answer. So the question is, what are the biggest challenges your organization faces in digitalizing servitization processes? Is it the high implementation costs? Is it the lack of skilled personnel? Is it data privacy and security concerns? Is it a resistance to change within the organization? Is it an integration with existing systems? Or is it all of the above or other? Interesting. While people are still answering, we see that resistance to change within the organization is one key factor, along with integration with existing systems. And quite a few people are mentioning all of the above. So many thanks for answering those questions. We'll see that some of those points will be actually tackled today through the webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to present our distinguished panel today. So we have the pleasure to have Parikshit Nayak joining us, Oli Quizmanen, and Achint Varia. And I will give the microphone to each one of you to briefly introduce yourself. So Parikshit, please.
Thanks a lot, Dimitris. And it's a pleasure to be on this webinar and sharing the stage with these panelists. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. My name is Parikshit Naik, and as it says on the screen, I am the Commercial Director at the Advanced Services Group. We'll talk a bit more about what Advanced Services Group is and what we do, but I'm very passionate about this topic on both fronts, on the digitalization side and servitization. It just happens that that's exactly the topic of my PhD. It was about the role of digital technology in enabling servitization, and also the overlaps with energy efficiency and sustainability. Over the past few years, I've worked with quite a few manufacturing firms to help them adopt servitization with an aim to reduce carbon emissions and to be more energy efficient. And I'll give you those examples later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Parikshit. Oli.
Yes, good morning and afternoon and evening to everyone. I'm Molly from a company called Tamturbo. I'm actually having a dual or triple role. So I'm responsible for the compressed air as a service and savings as a service business for Tamturbo, which is a compressor manufacturer. And then also I'm doing a PhD on the future resilience of outcome-based contracts, and also then doing some consulting for other companies to help tackle the challenges of this type of servitization, especially in product as a service type of business model. Previously been doing non-ownership business models for other, let's say, heavy industries, so in crane industry, for example. So my background is more on the hardware side than the software side of things.
Thank you, Oli. And Ahint, please.
Thank you, Dimitris. It is a pleasure to share the stage with a fantastic panel, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar, Dimitris. So I am Achint Varya. I'm the founder at Industrility, and I've been in the industrial space working with manufacturing and industrial companies for the last 15 years, with companies like Honeywell, with Rolls-Royce, and then eventually we started this company called Industrility, which is very focused on helping industrial companies on their digitalization journey, with servitization being the pinnacle, but it's a journey, and then we help companies throughout that journey. So, I'm very passionate about machinery, very passionate about industrial companies. I love to get out in the field, work at asphalt plants and or compressor plants and boiler houses to figure out how can we help digitization. And so that is, we'll introduce more about the company, introduce more about what we do, but it's a pleasure to share the stage with all of you, and please keep the questions coming throughout the session, and happy to address them. Thank you.
Super, many thanks, Ahint. And again, thanks to all of you for being present today. So without further ado, I'd like to jump on the first topic that will be introduced by Parikshit, which is the steps to digital servitization. So Parikshit, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you. I'll just wait for the control to come through.
Yes.
And I think it has.
Yeah. Perfect.
There we go. So who is the Advanced Services Group? To give you all a quick introduction. We are a research-led advisory firm that is focused on helping manufacturing firms, helping product-led industrial firms to compete differently, whether it is to differentiate yourselves, whether it is to fight commoditization, whether it is to generate new revenue streams. That is our expertise. And the pathway to do that is this very buzzing topic that we are going to discuss today called servitization. And that is what we have been doing for the past decade or so. And when I say research-led advisory, this means peer-reviewed, academic, rigorous research. All of the tools, techniques, and expertise that we present in front of the industrial firms is created through a very rigorous peer-reviewed process that comes from our academic research center that is spread across many universities now, although starting from Aston University in Birmingham. But we've been working globally through our partnering exercises, which is an exclusive consortium of industrial firms going through this growth together. We also have customized projects that we deliver for manufacturers and industrial firms that are facing very specific challenges in their servitization journey. And we also have training and masterclasses where we can help businesses grow the knowledge of servitization internally. Of course, for those who want to do it themselves, it is a trend to do it yourself. We have our own DIY tools and frameworks where you can explore the different milestones and steps in servitization and what kind of activities should you conduct at that point to go forward. And you can find all of that on our website as well. Our intellectual property spans across several topics, digital servitization being one of them, but more importantly on how to develop a strategy to adopt servitization, how to craft effective business models and innovative revenue models to make X as a service, product as a service, a reality within your industry. So you can explore more of that on our website or get in touch with me any day. Over the past decade, we have worked with more than 450 companies, and these have been across several industries, lots of different sizes, and of course, a global reach as well. Some of the logos on the screen are probably very familiar to you all. There are some that are protected by non-disclosure agreements, so you won't notice them here. But one common theme across this logo cloud of companies is all of these businesses wanted to accelerate the adoption of advanced services and wanted to accelerate the adoption of service-led growth within their organizations. And at the heart of all of these businesses are very strong products, very strong equipment. So I hope this resonates with you all. And this is sort of the core of service-led growth and servitization, is how can you take a product-led foundation of an organization and drive growth through something very different, which is services. And we'll talk about that in a second. So we have thrown around the word a lot, servitization, digitalization, a mouthful. So let's break it down on what it really means. Typically in product-led industrial firm, I use that term, product-led industrial firm, as a blanket term to capture manufacturers, to capture distributors, to capture installers and dealers. Any company that is dealing with industrial equipment or products, whether they manufacture it or whether they distribute it, are part of this topic. So that's why I would refer to them as industrial firms. So any of these firms, typically when you think of services, what is it that they provide? At the very starting stage, it is base services, where the outcome of these services is focused on purely providing the product, delivering the product and its basic functionality. These services are, of course, very focused around supporting the product. We are not yet at the higher level of supporting customers. Typical examples will include providing warranty, providing spare parts, and of course, delivering the product in its pristine condition. Now, these are, I'm sure, very familiar to all of you, and you've seen these across many industrial firms. The second stage is what we call intermediate services. These commonly cover training services. You will have customer services help desk, where if something goes wrong, you can call them and they will troubleshoot something for troubleshoot the challenge for you. Then you also have repair, maintenance, and overhaul activities, which typically form part of the broader after sales topic. That this is what we do once the product has left the factory gates or once the product has left our yard, is we will conduct any repair, maintenance, and overhaul. The outcome of these intermediate services is focused on delivering the condition of the product. So in base services, we have delivered the product itself. We have provided the functionality of the product. The second stage is now we are delivering the condition of the product, that over its life cycle, if something goes wrong, we can help make sure the condition is brought back to the desired level. Finally, we speak about advanced services. These are services focused on the product's capability, that what is the product designed to deliver? Why is the customer buying this product from us? What is it that they want to achieve by using this product? To give you some more examples of what these advanced services might look like, You can see the top of this staircase, which is marked by the blue steps. These advanced services are essentially based around guarantees. Guarantees of outcome from the product. Second step being guarantees of outcome from the business process in which the product sits. And finally, guaranteeing the business platform itself of the customer. Now, taking a very vague example of heating systems, we are talking about energy efficiency. So if we talk about heating or cooling systems, the customer asset capability, which is the first blue step, would be around guaranteeing the uptime and availability of a HVAC equipment. The business process would be guaranteeing the performance to a degree temperature. Say, we will guarantee 20 degrees Celsius of temperature in your home or in your commercial building for 24 hours of the day. That would be a process level. And at the top of a platform capability, you would be guaranteeing comfort in the building. So it's not just heating or cooling, but it's all other forms of comfort, whether it's levels of oxygen, whether it's healthy air within the room. Whether you want to do it or not is a very different question. Whether the customer wants this or not is a very important question. But to give you an example, this is how we see the world of industrial firms, going from the bottom of the staircase to the top of the staircase, transforming themselves through base, intermediate, and advanced. And this process, as the arrow on the left-hand side shows, is the process of servitisation. It is the movement away from selling purely outputs to selling outcomes. It doesn't mean you have to jump from the bottom step to the top step. And Achint very rightly said, servitisation and advanced services are the pinnacle of transformation, but it doesn't mean you suddenly go on top. It is an incremental movement, step by step, moving upwards. And the whole point is you are trying to differentiate yourself from your competitors because you are no more just providing products, but you are providing a comprehensive solution. You are creating a new revenue stream for yourself, and you are providing a more sustainable, financially and environmentally sustainable solution to the customers and to your own business. And how do you do that? When it comes to changing the way you operate, it very much starts at a business model level. It is a business model innovation to begin with, which starts first of all with the blue box, which is what we call customer value proposition, which says, how do you create new value for the customer? Then you go to the value delivery system. What are the resources and competencies you will need to deliver that new value proposition? Then the third box is about value capture process. What is your revenue model to capture value differently? And finally, as a result of point 1, 2, and 3, how do you achieve a competitive advantage? Now, here is the final point on digitalization. Where does it play a role? From our perspective, from having seen many businesses implement servitization, digital technology sits in the second box. It is a resource and a competence to help deliver the value proposition, but you must have a value proposition of added value to start with. And we'll talk about some examples later on. But I think Achint and Ollie will give you some of their perspectives on this topic as well. So over to you, Dimitris.
Many thanks, Parikshit. Yes, indeed. We will now jump onto the next session. And thank you, Parikshit, for laying out this the foundation of our conversation as it moves forward today. And we will have now Ollie sharing Tamturbo's journey to servitization, which was really from shifting to selling value instead of equipment, and what was the role in digitalization in there. So Ollie, you should have actually in a few seconds access to the screen. Just move your cursor. Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the introduction. So what I'm gonna first lay ground about what we do at Tamturbo. What is the industry? What is the environment we work in? And then that will kind of explain why these advanced services or product as a service was the way for us, or at least part of our journey towards the markets. So we deliver compressors. So the company was founded in 2010 by some compressor industry veterans who saw that there's now a technology emerging from other fields which is usable useful in the compressed air business as well. It's a very old industry. The first compressors, industrial compressors, were designed more than 100 years ago, and then the market where we are competing is oil-free compressed air, and we are working mostly with large multinational companies in businesses where the quality of air matters. So food and beverage, electronics, pharmaceutical, textile, automotive, where you don't want any oil in the compressed air as it sometimes gets into contact with the end product. So it's kind of partly a niche market. It's not really, shouldn't call it a niche. It's 30 to 40% of the compressor market, but still it's something that is on the high end of the industrial markets, where really the sustainability improvements have started to play a big role in addition to the air quality. So we started in 2010, and in 2015 we had our first product ready, and in 2017 we had a product line ready, and really we wanted to start the market penetration, go-to-market strategy, and that's when I joined the company, and we wanted to go. First, we wanted to go to the market in the way that the market is operating, which is much concentrated on distributor channels. It's partly OEM sales and partly distributor sales. But when our technology was new, we quite quickly saw that this is a task that requires some more thinking. I'll come back to this a little bit later, but for us, it wasn't really. It was a journey through these steps. So we did first develop a product. In our case, there are very few spare parts needed because of the technology, and there's very little maintenance services needed as well, which we then bundled into one type of a service product, a guarantee type of service product. But quite quickly, we noticed that actually the customers who are interested in our products are not interested in the product. No one cares about compressors. Even the old technologies, they are just, for the customers, a big pain in the butt, sitting somewhere in the corner. They are actually wanting the high quality compressed air. So actually the first commercial contracts were already done in an as a service business model. Much of our business is capex based, so we sell products. About 60 to 70% of our products are sold, mainly because of the tradition of buying that these big companies have. There we focus our sales efforts on value-based sales, because we save money for the customer. So our sales efforts are not. It's very different from the, let's say, legacy compressor manufacturers who are more into kind of selling products as a shifting boxes type of a way. So we do a lot of kind of consulting and analysis at the start of the customer engagement to understand what is the financial value that we can bring. Then, as said, we bundle our services into a fixed package. So X euros per year, we guarantee the uptime of the machine. And then the last part is the touch-free air, which is our air as a service. The problem for us for the traditional sale, capex-based sales model, is that our technology is much more expensive, about 3 times as expensive to manufacture than the so-called oil-free screw compressor, which is the dominant product on the market. Most of the profit for the oil-free compressor manufacturers actually then comes from the service, from the after sales market. 90% less in our case. We have nothing to service. We can't base our business on service revenue. And then also, which we saw quite early on, that the customers are a little bit apprehensive of the technology, because what we're talking about is high-speed electric motors, active magnetic bearings, so levitating motor in a compressor, which sounds like space technology to customers who are used to kind of old school technologies, normal motors and bearings and oil systems and so on. So this new technology was perceived as risky by the customers, but the point where then the air as a service comes into play is that, first of all, the maintenance cost of these screw compressors is very high, visualized here. Then the energy cost of this type of a product is much higher than this much more efficient type of compressing air. So the energy difference is significant. But then on the capex game, we had to play in the same level, so we were not able to do 3 times the price of the old technology. So we started to think that, okay, customers are not accepting what would be for us the right price for this technology, but they are getting a lot of savings in maintenance, and they are getting a lot of savings in energy. So why don't we make the transaction easier for the customer, spread that higher value which is created over the lifetime of the compressor, typically 10, 15, 20 years. Why don't we take some of our revenue from this savings? And yeah, the maintenance business is really not feasible. On the right side, you see our maintenance program for 10 years. On the left side, you see a typical oil-free compressor maintenance program for 10 years. You see there's so many less dots that you cannot really make this business as profitable as this one. And actually, we don't want to, because we want our products to be available all the time. We don't want them to be serviced. We don't want to change any parts. We want the kind of full lifetime guarantee type of a model. So the downside was that, but this then created for us an opportunity for the business model design, as we had clearly the lowest total cost of ownership. The customer is saving hundreds of thousands of euros per year using our products, but then we cannot charge those hundreds of thousands of euros on the first day. Then one part of this additional value is that in compressing air, always about 80 to 90% of the energy turns into heat. The old compressors were designed to get rid of the heat, to cool the compressor. Our unit was designed originally already to take advantage of the waste heat, to return that waste heat to the processes, which then led to a variant of our as a service business model, where we are able to capture the value of the service and energy cost difference, and then also that waste heat difference. I'll explain that a little bit more in the next round or the next part.
Thank you, Oli. Indeed, very, very interesting to see the journey that you took on shifting to selling value to your customers based on really what your product is delivering and how it is also designed, of course. And it would be interesting to delve deeper later on how digitalization really brought that possibility also to your activities. And talking of that, we'll jump now on the next session with Ahint, which is really about servitisation made real through digitalization. So Ahint, I'm giving you now access to the screen. You should have access.
Good. Perfect. Thank you. I think that introduction from Parikshit and Oli was great, and I'll connect it from a digitalization perspective. But before I do that, I recognize a lot of people in the attendees, so a lot of you would know me. But Industrility, the way we started this company was very much from a perspective of servitization, right? The name Industrility was meant for industrial machinery to operate like utilities. How do you operate utilities? Essentially, when you have gas or electricity, you just pay for the outcome. You don't worry about how it's being delivered, and you want maximum uptime. So it's very, the way we started was industrial machinery to operate like utilities. And over a period of last 6 years, we've worked with a number of manufacturers who've operated in the industry for almost 100 years. And as Ollie also mentioned, a lot of their machines are very much serviced from an after sales perspective. They are very much in base and intermediate services, but they want to go to advanced services. And so it's a full spectrum, it's a full journey. And we've enabled companies in boiler industry, in compressor industries, in hydrogen fuel industry, in construction industry. So a lot of industries, and a lot of them think of what we're offering as competitive advantage, and so a lot of them are protected by NDA. But other important factor is we are AWS certified, so we are a software provider using IoT and Gen AI capabilities, which is certified by AWS. We are a partner of AWS. We have the SOC 2 certification, and all of these things are super critical. I saw one of the poll questions, security and compliance being an important part. And so that is very much from our get-go that we make sure our platform is secure and it's compliant with all the robust security protocols. So with that, let me go back to the definition of servitization. And what you see here is exactly the opposite to what Parikshit presented, but I'll give you a perspective. So ultimately, what is servitization? Manufacturers want to make more money. They want to maximize the money, but not just from a product sale, but through the lifetime of that equipment. And customer want the best outcome, not just after they purchase, but through the lifetime of that equipment. And so it's about maximizing on both sides for the manufacturer as well as the customer. However, these companies have existed, manufacturers have existed for hundreds of years. And as you go back in history, they have thousands of assets. Let me take an example of a chiller company. They have 330,000 chillers in the field, and less than 1% of them are actually connected. So if you just focus on purely servitization, the pool is very small, but the manufacturer wants to make a lot of money from their existing install base. And so when you think of digitization, if you just focus on servitization, digitization, then it will always end up being just a pilot, because as soon as you try to scale it, you will end up with spreadsheets, with a Frankenstein model of connecting various systems. Whereas if you start with digitizing your base services, then your intermediate services, and then push your customers from your existing customers towards servitization, that I believe, based on our experience with our customers, is a better outcome. I completely believe that all industrial machineries will become sort of servitized, but it's a journey. And so you need to start digitizing your base services and then go towards advanced services. So it's about increasing the base and innovating faster. So again, let me take an example of industrial chiller. In the most simplistic sense, machine is supplied. It doesn't matter who owns the machine, but the outcome needs to be higher uptime and cooling, right? So in the space of servitization, it's all about the equipment, and it's about maximizing output from the equipment. So when you think of digitization, the traditional systems of CRM, which is customer-centric, ERPs, which is manufacturing-centric, PLMs, which is design-centric, these all systems, they are not fit for purpose when you think of servitization. And you come across various data which will sit in lots of different places, and they are not really of value when you think of servitization. You have design systems on the left-hand side, part systems which are in a different e-commerce place. You have lots of written sheets for service. You have lots of job folders that we are working with right now, where they are just on SharePoint, and this data is not usable. And so we believe that when we talk about servitization, everything has to be asset-centric. And when you make it asset-centric, regardless of who in your supply chain is, if it's the owner, if it's the manufacturer, if it's the distributor or the service technicians, all of them will have the same version of truth of that asset, and they can maximize the outcome from that asset. You can ask, what specific manuals are there? What are the parts that I require? What is the various sensor information for this equipment? All of that becomes available in one place. And when you do that, you are now able to offer what I like to call a my Tesla kind of experience. Tesla in most cases is a very simple car. It's essentially a battery with a normal car with almost the same features as all the other cars. But where it's different is it offers this My Tesla app where all the data is available in one place, regardless of who is accessing it. And we have the opportunity to create that, my printer, my HVAC, my chiller sort of experience where all of this data from all the different stakeholders is available in one place as a digital twin, as an operational digital twin, which helps maximize the outcome from the asset for the owners and maximize the opportunity from the manufacturer perspective. So with that, let me take a few examples that we have come across in the number of years. And I'll cover a demo of this towards the end, but here are a few opportunities I have seen from a digitization perspective, right? So in industrial printers, these are printers that print those dots on, Nestle bottles or Nestle packaging where, the best before dates. The biggest revenue, again, it's a razor blade model. The biggest revenue is the solvents and the inks. And they've created a subscription model for solvents and inks so that, before the ink gets finished, they get a reminder and they can order those. In asphalt plant, again, emissions is a big thing. There are lots of fumes that go out from asphalt manufacturing, and they are able to offer not just the plant, but they're able to offer emission monitoring as a service so that they are able to avoid the fines and create the best output. For HVAC, and I've seen this even for Jaguar Land Rover, I think they are also offering a similar service where they have AI-based chatbot where a service technician can ask, hey, what part do I need? What is the reason for this failure? You're able to interact with the machine as a chatbot, and you're able to pinpoint on a specific issue, instead of taking 4 hours to go through various manuals and find out what part do I need and how do I fix it. So again, there's a whole AI element here, which is very, very beneficial. And the final point I would make is the whole industry is struggling to monetize IoT because, technology was deployed for the sake of technology, whereas it should be deployed for the sake of outcomes. And there's a huge opportunity where if you connect IoT to servitization, IoT to intermediate services, better emissions control, energy monitoring, that is where the real opportunity is. And so we help not just deploy IoT, but we help connecting these two outcomes, which is what Parikshit began with. So here are a few examples. I'm sure Parikshit will go through a few other examples of advanced services, but there is a lot of opportunity of digitization across the industry. So with that, Dimitris, I'll hand it over to you.
Super many thanks, Akhint, and very interesting. And I have already one question in my mind that popped up, which is with regards as well to risk perception, which we will tackle later on during the Q&A. But basically, as we know, customers are very risk adverse towards new technologies, but also suppliers providing advanced services offers really look at risk as let's say a huge gray cloud. And so the understanding of this data can be extremely valuable to really measure this risk and know what is happening, what could happen, and what are some of your, let's say, steps that you can do to manage those. So we'll tackle that afterwards. But indeed, I hand over to Parikshit for a few examples of X as a service or efficiency as a service, as we like to call it at Base. So I'll give you access, Parikshit. And the
Thank
screen
you.
is...
And yes, I do have control. So thanks a lot, Achint. And I think I want to assure everybody that our messages seem very aligned, although we have not rehearsed. And it's just that we do think very similarly. And it's a pleasure to share this with Achint and Ollie. And what Achint mentioned about manufacturers really struggling with Industry 4.0, there's an anecdote, very much, I will anonymize this. One of our clients was in a very big hospitality meeting with one of the big 4 consulting firms. And I wouldn't name the client, I wouldn't name the big 4 consulting firm either. But the client asked the consulting firm that, so all of this hype about Industry 4.0, has anybody made money? And the consulting firm said, yes, we did. We did make a lot of money, but nobody else did. And we know that's the fact. And servitization is truly one of the ways to bring a business model to the technology and make it real. And I'll show you some examples of that. Coming back to the services staircase and looking at these different logos on the right-hand side, we have worked with, I've picked out 5 companies that we've worked with quite closely. 2 of them being Goodyear Tires, and MAN Truck and Bus. Now you can think Goodyear Tires, a tire is just a big black rubber thing with a hole in the middle. It has very little engineering complexity. Very few impressive slides can be made, unlike Tamturbo slides that Ollie showed, with a lot of drives and a lot of complex equipment. How do you servitize that? They were able to do it. Then we had Coolmill, which is a very small company and has a lot of parallels with what Ollie mentioned. It was a new technology in a very conservative market, and bringing that in front of clients, a disruptive technology, how do you make it reality? On the opposite side, there was Niedermann, a very large air purification equipment manufacturer in Northern Europe, and they were able to provide clean air as a service as well. And we also have Alstom, one of the biggest train manufacturers in the world, French manufacturer. And they have been working on mobility as a service and providing outcomes of mobility for their customers. And all of these examples I could go into depth, but having heard what Ollie and Achint mentioned, I would like to really draw upon, to start with, the Coolmill example. And that is something quite close to me. I have worked very closely with Alec, who's the MD of Coolmill. And to give you an idea, Coolmill makes rice milling machines, which are very disruptive to the industry, because the industry has been used to 50, 100-year-old machines. Just like Achint said, the way they have been working is the same. There's a lot of resistance to change from the customer side as well. So Coolmill brought this innovative machine, which has many, many benefits. First of all, it is highly energy efficient. Secondly, a normal milling machine will consume about 50% of input into the machine and throw it out as waste. It will destroy 50% of raw material, paddy, that goes. So a farmer that is putting 5 tons of raw material into it only gets about 2.5 to 3 tons of actual rice coming out. They should be getting a lot more. And they spend a lot of money powering such equipment. But at the same time, providing Coolmill equipment is very, very expensive. Very similar journey as Tamturbo, that going into a market very conservative with a very expensive equipment, how do you make it a reality? The way is to make this new technology affordable and easy to operate and guaranteeing the outcome. What they really understood is customers are not looking to own milling equipment. Customers are looking for rice milled out of the machine. If you can guarantee them that for every ton of rice that you put in, or sorry, every ton of paddy, which is the raw material that you put in, I will give you a guarantee of improved results as compared to the existing machine, you have a value proposition. Now, how do you deliver that? You have crafted your value proposition. So looking at the figure on the right-hand side, you have crafted point number 1. Now, how do you deliver it? What is your point number 2? The way to deliver is remote connectivity. It is IoT. Right now, they are able to connect to their machines in India, Cambodia, Southeast Asia, and monitor them, how their performance is. remotely control and intervene in the operation to make sure that they are performing at the right level, and also help the farmer understand where the efficiency losses are and how they can improve that efficiency further. That is how they use digital technology. So that achieved the point number 2. Using that, they were able to create point number 3, which is their revenue model. How do I charge for this differently? So the farmer that cannot pay for this very expensive machine should only have to pay for every kilo of rice that is produced at the end by using this machine. That is not the value proposition. That is only the revenue model. The value proposition is still the guaranteed outcome from the machine. And that is how we see the business model innovation working out. It starts very much with the first box, which is value proposition. How do you deliver it? So how do you use digital technology to do it at scale? And third, how do you craft an interesting revenue model to make it more affordable for you and for the customer as well? And across these 4 case studies on the slide, all of them have done these in the same sequence of 1, 2, and 3. Some of them, I would say, if we take the example of Niederman, would have swapped the number 2 and 3 around, where they might have first crafted a value proposition, then looked at how would we charge for it, and in order to charge for it in this new way, what kind of resources do we require? What kind of digital technology do we require? So that can be moved around. You can be flexible there. But big parallels with Ollie's journey as well. You have to start with the customer. It is very customer-centric process. Understand their pains and then craft a value proposition. And at this point, I also want to debunk some myths of what is not an X as a service business model. If your step 1 is on the right-hand side, which is your value delivery system, we come across businesses that come to us and say, I have connected my product, I have connected my entire install base, and I can see Achin smiling because he has heard this story as well, I'm sure, that I've connected all of this. Nobody is buying my subscription-based dashboard. Isn't this servitization? Has servitization failed for us? No, it has not, because you never had a value proposition. You connected data, you connected assets. Did the customer want a dashboard? Did you ever ask them? Not sure. Secondly, a lot of businesses come to us and say, we have a product that lasts for 7 years, and we are going to break down the cost of this product across these 7 years and charge the customer for every year. They don't have to pay the full upfront fee. Isn't that servitization? Not really, because imagine you have baked the cake and you have been serving this cake to the customer for several years, and now you have cut the same cake into 7 pieces, and now you're saying, this is a brand new cake. It is not really a brand new value proposition. It's the same value proposition cut in more pieces. So how do you make the cake bigger for you and the customer? And then, of course, cut it in as many pieces as you would like to. But that's where it starts. It has to start with the blue box. And that is what an X as a service business model, a successful one, looks like. So at this stage, I will hand it back to Dimitris. I'm sure Ollie and Achint have some examples from their side as well.
Super, many thanks, Parikshit. Yes, let's jump on. I'm just aware of time, so we'll collect some questions thereafter. But please, for the audience, don't hesitate to share questions as they come forward to you. So I'll now give the access to Ollie to share actually a case study within Tamturbo. How did they integrate digitalization within servitization for their offerings? So please, Ollie, the screen is yours.
All right, so just briefly to recap, we are talking about the lowest lifecycle cost or lowest total cost of ownership, and we wanted to use the servitization or compressed air as a service as a way to make our life feasible while helping customers make the decision on our technology. There's one thing that I mentioned, which then later on became a part of our servitized value proposition. We've always been talking about it in the traditional business that this heat that is generated in any compression process that actually then this became part of our revenue model in the servitized business model. Because, like I said, whenever you compress air, it becomes hot. 90% of the input energy is actually turned into heat. And in our case, because we were a company started in 2010 and not 1910, we already knew or saw the energy being a part of the value proposition, lower energy consumption and then higher energy return as a value proposition that we can offer to the customers, because many of the processes in our customers' facilities, for example, in food and beverage, they use a lot of natural gas to boil water and to generate heat. We already saw that from the get-go, and then a couple of years ago we developed a solution where we can actually guarantee a certain temperature of the water exiting our compressor in order for that to be as usable as possible for the process. So kind of this waste heat as a service, part of our touch-free air value proposition. Dimitris, you mentioned already the data angle. As we were developing the product and as our part of our team was coming from a company which was already doing digitalization in the last millennium. We by default we had a modem in our compressor. The technology we use, the high-speed motor technology and the active magnetic bearing technology, it's very data intensive. We have 250 measurement points, some of which we measure 14,000 times per second, and it's very data intensive in order to get the compressor with this technology operating efficiently. So naturally, we also then had the connectivity by default in our product, which also means that because compressed air is in that way different than many other processes, because the ambient conditions change. Sometimes in Finland it's -40, and then other days +30, and in Saudi Arabia it's +50. Compression of different temperatures and different moistures or humidities of air are different, so we can actually remotely optimize that process depending on the conditions and how they change. And of course, also the customer's processes change. They might make a change in some other part of the factory which changes the way they use compressed air, and then remotely we can optimize that operation. But like I said, we do operate on the traditional investment plus maintenance business model. Actually, practically, apart from a few geographical markets, no one has taken this option. All of the investment-based sales have also included this carefree service package, which is a fixed annual package, which we can price it at a level which is feasible for us, but it's still fractions of what the customers are used to paying for the traditional compressor maintenance. So it's very attractive for the customer. We used to call it extended warranty, but then we decided to rebrand it as carefree service, where we take care of everything for the customer. And like I said, this touch-free air was already from the first case onwards ongoing. So euros per cubic meter, quite often also efficiency guarantees that we spend X amount of energy per cubic meter, and then if we spend more, then the euro per cubic meter is less, and if we spend less, then the price of a cubic meter is higher. But a couple of years ago, we already also started to sell the waste heat. So we have customers who pay us for the cubic meters of air produced, and then also for the waste heat that we have recovered and delivered to their process. So kind of a dual revenue model based on this energy, which is kind of interesting because they already paid for that energy once in their electricity bill. We are just able to not put it to the sky, but we are able to give it to them in a good format. This is an example. I mean, of course, in many cases, the customer has made a decision that, okay, I need a new compressor. This old one is needing an overhaul, and in the oil-free screw compressors, the overhaul is typically 60, 70, even 80% of the price of the new machine. But in some cases, that's not the case. This is a case in Germany where they had more than enough compressors already. They had no interest in buying compressors. but they are part of the world's biggest brewing company, and they have very tight sustainability targets. They're measured, their plants are measured by kilowatt hours per amount of end product produced. So they want to really have the benefits of energy saving, both in the less energy used and also the energy recovered. So these carbon neutrality targets were the key point in this exercise. And in this case, we were able to show, and like I said, we do a lot of work at the start of the relationship to understand what are the savings we can bring. In this case, we were able to convince the customer and convince ourselves that we can bring 100,000 savings in electricity, in maintenance, and in recovered energy. Consequently, then our offer for the compressor, which the customer didn't actually need, was around the same number, meaning that all the functional and production quality improvements and the CO2 reductions and the benefits of becoming carbon neutrality as a brand are on top of that. So without an investment, just by substituting one part of OPEX with another part of OPEX, they were able to improve their operations. So as said, this and in these cases, of course, we are sharing the risk of the customer. We have had one case where we had a compressor in a Danone plant in Malaysia, which was operating fine, and the plant was happy, but Danone decided to discontinue production in Malaysia. They moved that production to Thailand. So we actually were sharing the risk of the customer in their business, in that facility's let's say existence. Of course, then we found another customer for the unit after a couple of months of work, but in a way, sharing the risk and the reward, the savings in this model is really the key for us, and we see more and more customers interested in not owning assets, especially these type of, I mean, the utilities it's a good example. No, or practically most industries don't have their own power plants anymore. In pulp and paper they do, and in food industry they have boilers and so on, but they're not interested in that. They're interested in what the outcome is. So that was the end of this part of the presentation.
Many thanks, Oli, and super interesting to see how you managed to also have this control on the total cost of ownership, and also bring additional value to the customer through being remotely connected to the asset. And connected to that, I take the opportunity to jump onto the next session of iHint, that will give actually an example and a demo of how such, let's say, digitalization offer can look like by having control on the assets remotely, and what it means on life cycle management and so on. So iHint, the screen is yours. I think potentially you need to share. Do you want to share your screen? I cannot hear you anymore. Somehow.
You need to click on the top, at least as a presenter. On the top, there's
I'm sharing the screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I think we are.
Okay, very good. All right, so I think in the interest of time, I'm going to skip a few slides. What is the most... Sorry?
Just give me a second. I think we don't see your screen.
Okay, I'm going to share again.
I'll stop sharing on my side. There you go.
Yeah,
now we can see your screen. Super.
Perfect. All right, so the way I spoke about digital twin, creating a digital twin, and then what we have done is we've created a white label platform. So each Tamturbo or Coolmill or any of these companies, you don't have to build your own solution. You can white label our solutions and then offer all sorts of various capabilities in order to launch your servitization journey, right? So when you launch a servitization journey, yes, you need to have a purpose, validated with the customer, understanding what the value proposition is, and then have a go-to-market model, right? So in case of Tamturbo, I loved the fact that there were base services, there were touch carefree and touch free. So those were the three levels. And we've seen that across all of our customer base, where they'll have bronze, silver, gold, platinum plans. And then as they go through those plans, they will need various capabilities to enable and unlock those plans. And at the top would be as a service, where they'll also want to do billing, etc. So we've built our platform with a future in mind, so that it will speed up your innovation speed. And as you unlock new value proposition, you can just unlock additional capabilities. So I'll cover 4 examples today. I will spend another 3 to 4 minutes, so that will give you enough time to ask lots of questions. And I'll cover, sticking to the theme that Parikshit has laid out, which is I'll cover an example of a base services, intermediate services. How can you use digitization to enable that. I think Dimitri's mentioned about circularity, so I'll mention about lifecycle management. And as Parikshit said, we've not prepared for it, but I think the graphs that you had, Ollie, I think I'll show something similar from a lifecycle management. And then I'll also, AI being so topical, I'll cover an example of an AI. So if I go to the product itself, so as you can see, this is very much, for an industrial boiler, it can be white labeled. And let's say a distributor wants to order a part for the boiler. You are in the boiler house, and you need to order an actuator, or the customer wants to order an actuator. Today, it used to take them 4 or 5 hours to find the right part, right? So they'll have to, first of all, identify what the issue is. Then they'll have to go to a manual, find that part, go to connect to the manufacturer, check if it's available, etc. Now, what they'll be able to do is, for that specific serial number, they are able to identify, this is exactly my part, exactly my machine. I want an actuator. I know exactly what the part number is. It also we can identify if it is expired. Some filters can be expired, some components can be expired. Like a car, you need to change your cam belt after 10 years. You need to change your tires after every 3 years, right? So all of those proactively, you're informing the machines, again, to increase the uptime, make sure there is no machine degradation, and they're able to order it right away from here. And this creates what Ollie also mentioned. It creates the connection with that customer, both from a transparency perspective, but also from an uptime perspective. So that is one use case. Very much you are improving the base services from what they offer. The second one is very much the IoT, right? So in this case, one of these compressors, we have 120 different parameters coming through. And as it goes out of bounds, we can trigger an alert, and that alert will inform either the manufacturer or the customer saying, hey, potentially this, this sensor is out of bounds. Maybe, this needs to be looked at, or a service needs to be done, or an inspection needs to be done, or a part is required. Again, it's about connecting IoT to an outcome, which is a part sale or a service sale for the manufacturers, and an outcome for the owner is about uptime and reducing the downtime. Now, the fact that all of this IoT data is coming through, we can enable the whole sustainability side of things. We have lots of different assets, and in those assets, if you are able to track, what is the emissions that you're doing throughout, for individual assets, you're able to create this transparency. Carbon disclosure is a big thing for most companies, which are typically $100 million and upwards in revenue. They have to disclose their emissions. And so by connecting IoT, by bringing that data, and by creating this visibility, it is a huge benefit for carbon disclosure. But also we offer them opportunity to offset their carbon. For people who do carbon offsetting and carbon footprint offsetting, we offer them that option, but mostly it's for reporting, and it helps them optimize their operations. So again, connecting IoT to sustainability is a big part. And then the third part was very much asset lifecycle management. So again, it's not about outcome right now, but throughout the lifetime of that equipment, how is the machine operating? And I think Toyota is doing a great job. Toyota is saying, if you service the car with me, I will give you warranty for the next 10 years, exactly as Tamturbo was doing also. And so it's about creating that visibility and also making sure I'm able to track, the whole lifetime. So if I go to, let's say one of these assets, I'm now able to create that visibility of the total cost of ownership. Now, what is my operational cost? Often for a lot of these equipments, energy is the biggest cost. So what is my operational cost? What is my capital cost? What is my lifetime? If I am servicing the equipment regularly, I'm able to extend the lifetime of this equipment. So again, helping with the circularity. And then for each of these, I'm able to track what is my maintenance cost throughout the lifetime of that equipment. And this helps them with making decisions of, is it the right time to upgrade the equipment, or is it the right time to change the equipment? So it's about creating that visibility and partnership with the customer throughout that lifetime of that equipment. And that again feeds into the pinnacle of servitization, which is bringing them from base to intermediate, creating this visibility and converting them into servitized models. So it's more data-driven approach. And finally, AI is everywhere. And so one of the services that we offer is AI-based chatbot. So you can say, so I was doing a few examples here. What does the alarm code ALM 201 mean? Right. So I'm a service technician. I'm getting this error on this chiller. If I ask this question, what does this alarm code mean? It will now, in a natural language, I'm asking a question. It is now going to, go through some of these documents that we've taken in, and it is going to try to answer those questions. We can take a lot of these data inputs, but it gives me an answer. And then it also, you can also, maybe this is slowing down. I have a few examples up here. What does this mean? It will tell you what it means. How can I fix it? So it understands what it means. And then it gives you a response. You can ask questions in a natural language. And then, in your local language, and it'll give you an answer in a local language. So all of those long response times from a service technician, that can be really reduced. So this is really a game changer. The whole AI-based use of AI and generative AI in machinery space has transformed the service industry. So with that, I have one last message for you. One, you need to think of not just a pilot from a servitization perspective, but think of all of your customers and all the machines that are in the field, and how can you take them through the journey towards servitization. Think of making the data and technology asset centric, because you want to maximize the outcome for both. And AI is very much here. Think and partner early to invest in AI. And I think as Tom Palmer from Rolls-Royce had once mentioned, partner early and keep iterating on it, because that is critical with the speed at which technology is moving. So with that, Dimitris, I'll hand it over to you. One last thing, anyone who is part of the SET Alliance, I'm willing to offer £5,000 worth of free trial towards our product. I have a capacity of doing one per quarter. So anyone who is part of SET Alliance, I'll be more than happy to offer them a trial towards our product. So please feel free to reach out to Dimitris or myself.
Super, many thanks, Ahind. And actually, I take the opportunity to jump on a question from Jan Agri that mentioned earlier on your previous presentation. Ahind, did you ever come across challenges where customers were uncertain about sharing the data from their use of the equipment that was connected via IoT for as a services? If so, how did you solve this?
Yes, so we have, and I think there are two types of IoT data that usually comes into context. One is machine operations IoT. How is the machine operating? What is the service side of it? And usually in that space, they are much more open to give the data, because then you're focused on uptime. The second part of it is more on the output, because that is quite sensitive, right? The amount of oil that is flowing through my valve, the amount of product that I'm creating. And again, there are two parts of it. If you're creating value and if you're creating that partnership, then they are much more open to it. And often what I have noticed is they'll start small, and then once they're able to build that relationship, they're able to expand further. But it 100% comes through, and that's why we talk about security and a lot of that from a platform perspective. So anything that we hold, it is all customers' data. They are the owners of that data, and so that is taken care of. And the second part is it's about adding value. So I am contributing my location to Google, but I'm willing to do that because Google is giving me benefits, which is where is the traffic, when I'll be able to get there. And so it's about, if you're able to give benefits, they're willing to share that data. And so that communication with that customer of the value is the most critical part.
Super, many thanks, Ahint. And we have a couple of minutes left for this webinar, so I'll take the opportunity to open the floor to the rest of the questions that we had coming in as well during the session. And I'll take the opportunity to grab the first question from Jan, which was directed to Oli. And he mentioned, Oli, very interesting presentation. Thank you. What is your experience of selling related to total cost of ownership? Your customers were not interested in your products, you said. Does that mean that they did not know their true TCO and that you need to educate them in order to explain your value offer? If so, how easy is it to do so?
Yeah, most of the customers have measurements of energy and compressed air, or let's say most of the high-end customers in this oil-free market, they have some measurements either on an asset level or compressor level, or at least on the compressor room level. They have that information somewhere. Most of them don't use it in any way or form. So they might have decades of information of their compressed air energy consumption and compressed air consumption, but they actually might not know what then has been the individual asset energy efficiency. So we do a lot of work on the beginning phase of the relationship to get the data. We do site audits. We do, even if they don't have reliable measurements, we can even do the measurements to understand what is the current situation in order to give some estimate or even guarantee that this is this much we will save in the future. But it does take some effort, a lot more than in the traditional answering to RFQ type of sales mode. So it is resource intensive, but on the other hand, that's the only way in which we can let's say that's the only way in which we can differentiate against the cheaper competitors. So we just have to do it, and it just, if it takes a week to do a savings calculation for a customer, then we'll do it. The good side is that once we do this work, once we say that, okay, you will save 98,750 based on these parameters, and we're very open on the parameters, then it's almost impossible for them to select the other product if we are actually then able to show these numbers in a reliable way. But it is an effort.
Great, many thanks, Oli. And I know that normally we have just 2 minutes left, but I'll expand just for a few minutes the webinar, if that's all right with our panelists, and I hope our attendants can stay online for 3 to 4 more minutes. I'll take the next question that was also from Jan towards Parikshit. And he mentioned, based on your example of the need to expand the cake using data, would you say it is a real step towards decoupling revenue and value creation from material use and product volume sales?
Yes, I would say, well, first of all, maybe one point of clarity. I wouldn't suggest using data to expand the cake. I would suggest using the voice of customer to understand what more they want, and then using data to scale that further. So the only way I see to expand the cake is to address unmet customer needs, unmet customer challenges, and data is your vehicle to do that at scale. Otherwise, you would be doing, like Achin said, you would have spreadsheets and you'll be stuck in pilots. And I think with servitization and the concept of outcome-based services or any form of complex services, the idea of detaching value creation from product volume sales is mission critical. There are so many horror stories where we have heard business leaders going in isolation, creating advanced services pilots, launching it, delivering value for themselves and for the customer. And then the senior leadership, CFOs and the CEOs coming back and saying, okay, but how many products did you sell? It was never about selling more products. It was never about pushing more boxes. The whole point is to move away from that model and compete differently. If you go back to that model again, you are still the same manufacturer you have always been. And which is interesting because even at the beginning in the poll, one of the insights, one of the opinions of the audience was resistance to change in adopting digitalization. There's resistance to change, to move away from traditional KPIs as well. And product volume sales is one of them. That this is about how much value we have created for the customer, which is hard to measure, of course. That's why it's harder to change. But digital technology can really help you measure how much value you create instead of just pushing more boxes.
Super, many thanks. And actually connected to that, I have a question to all of you. First you, Parikshit and Akhint, and then Oli, really also from a hands-on experience within Tamturbo. What have you seen would be the ideal team within a company to be brought together to actually go through this journey?
If I may start, I hope an ideal team exists out there in the world, but I haven't seen it yet. Some of the good teams that we have seen in our client base they tend to be driven by the service business and the service business wanting to become a bigger champion within the organization. But often it starts to involve at the right time, the product side, the engineering side, also the marketing and the sales side. I think the crux of forming a right team is when do you engage the people at the right time. I think all people need to be involved at some point. The timing is what matters because getting salespeople involved early on, you would be selling false promises to the customer. Getting product people involved very early on, you would quickly go down into the capabilities of the product, of what it can do and what it cannot do, and very risk averse. So it's about the timing of bringing the team together.
Yeah, a couple of points from my side. One of the changes I've seen in some leaderships, I've met a couple of leaders where they've taken both revenue streams, sales revenue streams and service revenue streams under the same leader. When that happens, they are now able to see across both revenue streams and actually bring them together and take a strategic viewpoint saying, I'm now going to run an isolated project to make this happen. And then because it's not just about creating a new business model, you then have to do a whole organization change. How do you incentivize people? How do what your customer service model looks like? So it is a big transformation. It won't happen overnight. But if you have a leader who takes both of these under the same umbrella and then they partner with engineering partnership is critical. And then you need to have some sort of CTO organization who takes care about security, data, technology. That is also an important pillar to enable this. So that's an enabler, and that is also required. So that sort of a core team change I've seen being successful, done very well. And I think what Parikshit mentioned, going back to the old KPIs, how many products have I sold? That is where I have seen it relying on just pilot.
Maybe I can continue from that, not from a Tamturbo perspective, because we're quite an agile scale up. Maybe from our perspective, the key point has been that the people doing this have been wanting and eager to understand the customer. Whereas if it were a more established company at the time, this might be less, and then there would be these KPIs and metrics which are targeting people's time spent on other things. But I'll give you an example from Connect Trains, the previous case I did before Tamturbo, where there was really an equipment sales organization and a service sales organization, and the only way we were able to push an advanced service contract, we called it rental, but it actually was more of a let's say non-rental agreement for industrial cranes. The only way to do it was to set up a team separate from these two business units to do the development and the piloting in certain markets, and also then to drive in the organization the needed structures, for example, to get away from the equipment sales commission based target setting and rewarding. We had to create for each legal entity, for each country, a dummy organization, dummy business unit that then purchases the cranes from the crane sales unit and the services from the sales service unit, in order to get them to be fully aligned, because the crane sales guys were saying, yeah, I make £5,000 per crane I sell. Now you're saying that I get £7 per week. This, to get away from this type of an issue, it might require a separate kind of a parallel way of organizing.
Super, many thanks, Oli. And I'll take the last question, and then I'll wrap up the session from Sanjay, who mentioned, how do we encourage the sellers of product organizations to look at servitized models rather than a service stream selling? And maybe Parikshit, you can start, and then we can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I completely understand the latter part of the question about rather than service stream selling. I assume this is about just selling services as normal and selling products as normal, and depending on after sales sides. The one successful way of encouraging sellers in product organizations we have seen is not to force all of your customers to buy servitized offerings. So if you're trying to sell outcome-based services, not all of your customers will want to buy these services. There are specific segments that you need to identify for whom you will design and deliver these services. There will always be some customers who just want to buy the product and who just want to buy after sales as it is. Why would you say no to them? This is an additional revenue stream. This is not a substitute to your existing revenue streams. So always keep that in mind. If you think of companies like Rolls-Royce, the poster child of servitization, they don't sell power by the hour or total care solution to all of their customers. Some customers will always buy gas turbines and engines. Why would you stop selling that to them? So I would say start with the right customers and think of it as a different revenue stream, not a substitute.
Super, many thanks,
Yeah, and I just a digital perspective to that is, and hence do not, my suggestion to most companies would be partner early, either with finance organization to understand how to finance this, with technology companies to, plug and play instead of building this, with consulting and education companies to run these workshops. I would say partner early, because otherwise you'll end up spending 2-3 years building this capability and trialing this out, and then by that time the time would have passed away. So I think is fundamental to going down this journey, because the whole game here is to have a faster time to market, experiment, learn fast.
Super, many thanks, Akin. And Oli, I know that from your product perspective, it was clear to go on servitized model because you didn't have as much value on selling maintenance and spare parts, but also that was not the purpose of your company, like you mentioned, having a product that is available and reliable to your customers, which at the end of the day is really the essence of servitization. It's really making the asset as much available as possible to your customers. Great. Since we are over time, I'll wrap up. And first of all, to have the time to do so, I would like to thank first our panelists today for joining this session and for sharing really their insightful experience and thoughts on this model and this approach and the topic of digitalization around product as a service. So again, many thanks, Parikshit, Ahind, and Oli for joining today. I'm inviting the audience to actually follow the news that are coming out on the website of the SET Alliance, and also to download, for instance, the latest white paper that we launched on integrating circularity within product as a service, and what are some of the important aspects to consider while doing so. But as well, I'll take the opportunity to mention that our next webinar will be coming up in September, and we are aiming to actually expose successful case studies within product as a service and on companies that have successfully made the journey towards servitization. So we will make a call for applications that will be open until end of July for companies to share their projects, and we will select, let's say, the ones that are the most impactful, that integrate circularity as well, that are using a specific type of technology that is also impactful towards the climate. So looking forward to hearing from many of you on this perspective. And I'll close the webinar by mentioning again, do reach out to Ahint and myself to know about this demo trial that you can obtain. I think it's super interesting to see how you can further optimize your offerings, whether you are early on the stage of servitization or you are in the advanced stages of servitization. So for both approaches, it applies. And I have here the contact details of all of our speakers. We will make the slides available after the session. And once the session closes, you'll have a pop-up window that requires you or suggests you, invites you to provide a feedback on the session. And we'll also be supplying a written answer to the questions that were raised during the session. So on this, I would like to thank all of you and enjoy the summer.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.